Does that mean I have to start being nice now?
Yes, you're officially on. Hello, everybody. We're going to wait just a minute for people to log in. Mark remembers that he needs to be kind now. So we are very, very excited you are joining us for today. This is going to be a great session. So we'll just wait one more minute. Can put some hold music on.
I feel like I want to hear the Jeopardy theme song.
Right? A little bit. It's
Hmm.
like, let's stump Mark. We could ask random questions while we wait.
I would love to
All
get
right.
something. That'd be pretty cool if we could do that. If we get some
That
really
would
hard questions.
I know. All right, we're going to cue that up right now. Okay. Hello, and welcome to the Pragmatic Product Chat series, where we tackle the biggest challenges facing today's product management, product marketing, and other market and data-driven professionals with some of the best minds in the industry. I'm Rebecca Kalogeris, host of Pragmatic's weekly podcast series of the same name, and the host for today's webinar, Your Sales Teams Keeps Discounting and What Can You Do About It? Before we dive in, three quick housekeeping items. First, please feel free to use the chat, which some of you are already doing throughout our session. It's a great way to connect with me, to Mark, to your fellow attendees. In fact, let's get it started right now. Drop a quick note in the chat telling us where you're located and why you think your sales team relies on discounting so much. Now, if instead of a comment, you've got a question, when we do love questions, please drop those in the Q&A section, a little box at the bottom, which you'll find on your Zoom window. And lastly, because you will ask, and I'm going to say this and someone else will still ask, is that yes, the session is being recorded, and yes, we will send you a copy after the call so you can revisit any key insights and share with your team. All right, let's set the stage for why we're all here. If you're a product manager or a product marketing manager, you know this pain, right? You have carefully crafted pricing that reflects your product's value, but then deals keep closing at lower prices. Your sales team says the customers demand a discount or we had to match the competition. The result? Eroded margins, confused value messaging, and a sales culture that defaults to discounting instead of selling value. Here's what's really happening. Salespeople discount because they don't know how to sell value. They compete on price because they can't articulate why your product is worth more. And the kicker, as product people, we often contribute to this problem by focusing on features instead of outcomes. So, today we're going to explore why discounting happens, how it undermines everything we have worked so hard to build as a product team, and most importantly, what we can do to fix it. Because when the sales teams understand and can communicate value, they stop discounting and start winning at the prices you intended. Now, let me introduce someone who has spent 25 years solving exactly this problem. Mark Stiving. Mark Stiving is a renowned pricing expert, instructor, coach, advisor. He's the author of 4 books on pricing, including one, Selling Value, How to Win More Deals at Higher Prices. He works with Fortune 100 and PE firms and growth companies, helping them optimize value and capture more. And he is a former pragmatic instructor and creator of the original price course, which I had the pleasure of working on with him when we first launched. So welcome, Mark.
Well, thank you, Rebecca. I appreciate that. This is going to be fun.
It
Is it
is
my
going to
turn?
be, it is your turn. Yes. Mark.
Because I got to say, you pretty much just gave the whole presentation.
Yeah.
Thank
So
you. I
thanks for
appreciate
coming.
that.
It saves time.
So let me share. Are we sharing? Okay.
You are good.
Excellent. So if everybody can see what we're talking about, excellent. My job here is to help salespeople win at higher prices. I do remember. Okay, what I'm going to tell a different story. I've been in pricing, as Rebecca said, 25 years. It's actually closer to 30 now. I'm getting older, but I didn't realize how important the problem was until I became a pragmatic marketing instructor. So if you guys are all pragmatic students or aficionados of pragmatic, you know that if there's a single word that described what pragmatic talks about, it's problems. It's market problems. And after being an instructor for several years, I took the knowledge I learned with them, tied it into what I know about pricing, and we were able to create some really interesting insights around what does value actually mean to a customer. And that's what we're going to talk a lot about today, is what does value actually mean to a customer? So there's a single sentence that describes all of business, and that is this: buyers trade money for value. If you think about the last time you bought something, doesn't matter what it is, the only reason you bought it is because you thought you got more value than it cost you in money. If you didn't think that, you wouldn't have bought it. And so when we think about this one sentence, it actually yields three really big questions for us. Which buyers, how much money, and what value? We're going to spend a lot of time today talking about the value piece of this. We're not going to talk about the pricing piece or the price segmentation piece or the market segmentation piece, but we will talk about how do we communicate value? How much value are we actually delivering? Do we even know the value that we're delivering to our customers? I've worked with hundreds and hundreds of companies at this point in time around value and what does value mean. And I'm almost embarrassed to share with you that almost nobody understands what the value of their products are to their customers. It's pretty fascinating to know that. And so hopefully as we go through this today, you're going to get some great insight out of this. Now, pricing is powerful. What we're trying to do is get our salespeople to sell at just a little bit higher prices. So let's start this off with a quick one. If you're making 100 million in revenue, don't care what the currency is. It could be pennies. That's okay. You're making 100 million in revenue. All of your costs are 90 million. That gives you 10 million in profit. Isn't life awesome? But what happens if you could get your salespeople to discount 1% less? If we can get 1% more profit or 1% more revenue, it actually doesn't change our costs at all. Our profit goes to 11 million. And so that tells us that a 1% improvement in pricing can lead to a 10% increase in profitability. This one thing is huge. And so what are the things that you can do to help your salespeople be more effective at selling the value of your product, which also means discounting less? So that's what we're after today. The single most profitable pricing strategy that any company can adopt is context-driven pricing. It has a super simple meaning. It means charge what a buyer is willing to pay. That's it. Charge what a buyer is willing to pay. Turns out it's impossible, right? You can't do it right because you can't read a buyer's mind. But there are three big tenets to context-driven pricing, one of which we're going to focus on a lot today. Tenet number one, willingness to pay is contextual. Turns out umbrellas are worth more on rainy days than they are on sunny days. Go figure, right? So what's the context? Willingness to pay is contextual. This is the one we're going to spend most of our time on today, and that is willingness to pay is malleable. If you think about it, the reason that we have salespeople is because we want them to explain the value of our product. The reason that we have marketing people is we need them to help explain why someone wants to buy our product. What's the value of our product? And so if you think about anything that you haven't bought before, you don't really have today, and someone says, hey, don't you want to buy this? The first thing that goes to your mind is, well, why? What's the value? And as we do a better job at explaining the value of what that is, the more likely someone is willing to pay our price. And in fact, if we could actually measure how much someone's willing to pay, their willingness to pay increases the more they understand the value of what we do. The third tenet is the fun one because it gives us all an out. Perfection is impossible. I can't read somebody's mind. I don't know what someone's willing to pay. You don't know what someone's willing to pay. Totally okay. But here's what we want to do is be better tomorrow than we are today. So if we can get a little bit more tomorrow, then we're doing really well as an organization. So we're going to focus on willingness to pay as malleable. And we could rephrase that as how are we going to sell the value of our products? So think about what happens. Buyers are making a trade-off between price and value. I'm going to make a quick adjustment on my technology. So when we deliver a product that has great value at a reasonable price, then buyers buy. And this is exactly what we want. But here I am. I want to sell you a cup of Starbucks coffee. It's only $100. Anybody want to buy it? You can type that in the chat because I'm sure we're going to see a lot of yeses, and I'm collecting checks. Everybody's gone to sleep or my chat's broken, one or the other. Oh, at least Laura's playing. Thank you, Laura. Okay, we've woken some people up. We've woken some up. Okay. Oh, Panagiotis, whatever, however you say that, fabulous answer. Because here's the scoop. Did I mention to you that there's a couple gold coins at the bottom of the cup? Doesn't that change your mind? And so here's what just happened is we had a perception of the value of the product, even though the product itself had some real value associated with it. Our buyers buy based on how they perceive the value of our product. And you, as product managers, you're building products that have great value. So, where's the disconnect? How well do our salespeople communicate that value, the value that we truly created for our products, to our customers? And so now let's look at the other story. Here we've got $100. We're charging $100 for a cup of Starbucks coffee that doesn't have gold in it. And so we don't win the deal. Turns out that every time we lose a deal, we lose it for two reasons. We lose it because the price was too high. By the way, if you've ever worked with a salesperson, a sales team, and I assume that's why you're on here because you want to work with sales teams, every time a salesperson loses a deal, the reason they give you is the price was too high. And by the way, they're right. The price was too high because you could have lowered the price to zero and still won the deal. So yeah, the price was too high. But it turns out it's also true that there wasn't enough value. It could be that the product itself didn't have enough value. It could be that we didn't do a good enough job at communicating the value. But the key is there wasn't enough value. So every time we lose a deal, it's for two reasons. The price was too high and there wasn't enough value. So you have a choice. Do you want to focus on the price side or do you want to focus on the value side? And today we want to focus on the value side. How is it that we can create and communicate the value of what it is that we actually build? Okay. So I've talked about two really important concepts so far. We talked about how context-driven pricing was defined as charge what a buyer is willing to pay. And we said that buyers trade money for value. How do we reconcile willingness to pay and value? So here's a way to think about it. Let's pretend that a buyer could be completely rational. They know everything there is to know about your product. They know exactly how it's going to help them be successful. They could actually figure out what the incremental profit might be. They know everything. There's nothing that's confusing to them. And so they take all that information and say, given that information, here's what I might be willing to pay. So we're using all of that rational information. But that's actually not what someone's willing to pay. Turns out their actual willingness to pay is based on their perceptions of value. So what is it that they believe? And these two circles overlap. The part in the middle is the recognized value. This is the real value that we deliver to our customers, and that our buyers are able to say, yep, I got it. That's what I'm buying. That's what I'm willing to pay you for. Then there's the stuff we'll call beyond value. This has nothing to do with a rational person's decision. This is why you hire friendly salespeople, so that they can make friends at the customers and they give you the benefit of the doubt and they really want to do business with you. Has nothing to do with the rational decision. But here's the hard part, and that's the unrecognized value. There's a lot of value sitting out there that we deliver to our buyers, but they don't know about it before they buy our product. They don't recognize it. And if they don't recognize it, we don't get paid for it. And that's the biggest reason why salespeople are going to discount, is because they don't see this. They can't communicate this to their buyers. And what we need to learn is how is it that we can help our salespeople communicate unrecognized value to our buyers? Because I got to tell you, your company exists for one reason, and that's to create value for customers. That's why all companies exist, to create value for customers. So that's sunk in. You guys all believe it. You're with me completely. So now here's the hard question. If companies exist to create value for customers, what is value? Let me just say, but by the way, go ahead and type your answer in the chat for me. And yes, I'll share the slides. It's no big deal. Go ahead and type your answer in the chat. I want to preface this with saying I have argued with my pricing colleagues for 30 years about the definition of value. So I guarantee you we will not agree. But I almost thought that the right answer was up there. I was like, wow, I can't believe that. um, but take a shot. Oh my gosh, look at this. Look at this. There's some good ones in here. There's some good ones in here. Benefits, values the customer needs, making life easier. Oh, these are good. Worth or usefulness, efficiency. Michael, I love Michael's answer. He always gives the same answer. Thank you, Michael. um, resolving pain points. Okay, these are good. These are good. Okay, so by the way, I'm not saying any of them are wrong. I'm going to give you my definition, and my definition works really, really well, especially when we're trying to communicate value to our customers. And that is this. Remember pragmatic's number one word, and that's problems. Now, obviously, problems isn't value, but what is value is the result of solving problems. Value is the result of solving problems. And so what we want to learn to do is understand what are the problems that we're truly solving, what are the results that our buyers are getting, and then what's that worth to them? What's the value to them? Most of us are in B2B, I'm guessing. And so in the world of B2B, I love B2B pricing, by the way, because in the world of B2B, value is measured in incremental profit. The only reason a company buys something from you is because they think they're going to make more profit after they've bought it than before they bought it. That's it. They don't buy any for any other reason. And so if you think about that incremental profit, it comes into three different areas: increased revenue, decreased cost, reduced risk. And they actually go in that order too, by the way. Your customer's CEO cares about increased revenue. Your customer's COO and CFO care about decreased costs, and nobody actually cares about reduced risk. We actually care, but nobody wants to buy more insurance, and so it's just really hard to sell. So as we start thinking about value, what we want to think about is how do we help a customer grow revenue? How do we help a customer reduce their costs? Panagiotis, if we talk about margin, I could say it's either revenue or it's cost. It's up to you. If I can increase revenue without growing costs, I got more margin. If I can decrease costs, then I got more margin without changing price. So it always comes in those three places. Forrester has this great quote: 62% of vendor salespeople are knowledgeable about their company and products. That means salespeople can stand up and talk about our products. We could talk about our companies. We can tell you about our features. We know our features. They're awesome. But only 22% understand buyers' business issues and where they can help. That means our salespeople don't understand our buyers' problems and the results they're trying to achieve. If we could translate our products and our features into their problems and results, we're now communicating in a way that truly matters to our buyers. We're explaining the value of what it is that we do for our customers. So can I pause for a question, Rebecca? Anything?
There's a lot of good comments, but I don't have got questions yet.
Okay. Michael says 38% of sellers still don't understand their own products. I know. That's amazing. That's amazing. Um, oh, okay. Well, let's move on. We're going to talk about a concept called value tables then. Value tables is a systematic way for us to understand and document the value of what we deliver to our customers. And so we'll just jump back to this slide real fast. I want you to memorize these four words: value, result, solution, and problem, right? Value is the result of solving problems. So when we think about a value table has four columns: solution, problem, result, and value. Value is the result of solving problems. Pretty straightforward. So if a buyer has a problem, they buy your solution, they achieve some result, and they get value from that. How much incremental profit are they making? This is pretty simple and straightforward. It's just really hard to do, but it's a pretty simple, straightforward way to think about this. And so we're going to go through an example. I'm going to use this example through the rest of the webinar. We can do others if you want on the fly. But one of the companies I worked with, they do all of the technology for drive-through restaurants. I'm sorry, the drive-through sections of fast food restaurants. And they said to me, "Hey, we've got this long-range communications radio." I don't know about you guys, but I have no idea why you would need a long-range communications radio at a drive-through in a McDonald's. Sorry. But after working with them for a while, we figured it out and we were able to understand they actually solve a problem. What's the problem they solve? Now imagine you're a McDonald's manager and you would say the following words: our drive-through lane slows down when customers have to wait for us to prepare the food. This upsets everyone in line and reduces our revenue during busy times. That feels like a problem. So if someone has that problem and we're able to solve it, what result might they get? Well, by taking orders at the edge of the parking lot, we have more time to prepare the food, resulting in 2 more cars per hour during peak times. Nice. What's the value of this? Well, 2 cars times 3 peak hours a day times 360 days a year times $10 per car times 60% margin is almost $13,000 of incremental profit per year for having a long-range communications radio. I don't know about you guys, but I think this is pretty cool that you can actually put a profit number on a feature or a product. How much more profit are we going to make our customer? So how do you do this? To do this, you want to start with the solution. When you think about the solution, you could do the overall product. So a long-range communications radio might be a whole product. It might just be a feature of the product. I think of this in terms of marketable product features. These are the objects that you put on your website, right? So we know that you're not supposed to talk about your features, but everybody does. So what are the features that you love? What are the features that you think convince a buyer to buy from you? And that's what we're putting here. What are those marketable product features? Start with your single most important one, what you think is most important, but do a bunch of them. You're going to be surprised at what you find as you start saying, where's the real value in this? And your understanding of what buyers care about becomes dramatically enhanced. Now, I also want to point out real quickly, I put this in the value table as solution, problem, result, and value. And I do it that way because most people think about their product first. And so what you should be doing as a product manager is thinking, what are the features that we've got in our product that we love, that we think are really important? And then build a value table around those features. But can I also suggest that you do this for things that are on your roadmap, right? Why would you be building a new feature if it doesn't deliver value to a customer? So we want to think through this that way as well. Now, if you were doing this chronologically, you would put the problem first. People have a problem, they buy a solution, they get a result that delivers value. But we put solution first just because most people think in terms of their products first. And so we're going to make it easy for you. Put the solution first. And in the example we just did, remember we had the long range communications radio for the solution. Okay, here's the hard one. What problem does it solve? If you're a pragmatic student or graduate, you know that we ask this question all the time. What problem does it solve? And I got to tell you that this is hard. I mean, it really is. So when you start writing out problem statements, here's some guidelines I want you to think about. And by the way, these are consistent with pragmatics guidelines as well. I must have stolen it from them. Um, Use first person format. So say I or we. Make sure you can include some pain, some emotional reason that the buyer cares, and don't even hint at what the solution might be. So those are three great rules. It could be different for different buyers. So maybe you have different personas and you say, look, I want to think about this persona and write a separate row for them. You could have more than one problem for any given feature or for any given product. That's okay too. Start to capture all the different problems you think you might have or you think you might solve. But this is by far the hardest. Here's the example we used. Our drive-through lane slows down when customers have to wait for us to prepare the food. This upsets everyone in line and reduces our revenue during busy times. So I want to point out this is our, right? So we put in first person format, upsets everyone in line. So we're putting pain involved. And you'll notice that it doesn't talk about the solution at all. Even though we know the solution is a long range communications radio, it doesn't talk about the solution. Okay, here's some good news. I have been working on problem statements for a long time. And so I crafted a separate GPT. If you guys use Chat GPT at all, what you'll see is that I crafted something called Pricing GPT. I uploaded all of my content, all my books, all my blogs that I've written. And one of the things I put in my pricing G, by the way, if you ask it questions, with any luck, it will answer it like I would. I'm not a huge, I don't have a lot of trust in AI, but I use it a lot. But here's one thing that I've learned to trust, and that is if you type the word comma problem, this is like a mini agent. And then you can type in any problem statement you want. Rebecca, give me a problem statement. I know I just put you on the spot, didn't I? Give me a problem. I don't want people to think this is
Uh,
set up.
I know. Wow. Problem statement. I am going on a date night and we're gonna share a bottle of wine, and so I need to get there back and forth safely. And I live in the middle of nowhere. You'd think a guy would give you a heads
Okay.
up.
So God, you could have given me a shorter one. So all this is going to do is it's going to go out and first thing it's going to do is say, hey, would Mark like this problem statement? So they're evaluating it. Is it written in first person? Come on. Is there a reason why you're not going now? I've never had it not work.
Huh,
Thank you,
me either.
Rebecca. What a
Yeah.
horrible problem statement.
I was gonna say it's so good. It just was like, and ta-da.
Okay, so I'm going to copy
It is.
that.
It's because we're watching live. Yes,
Paste it.
it's
I'm
the
going to do it
software demo
again.
live.
Oh, it's frozen. Look at this. The whole thing's frozen.
Mm. And here is how Mark broke ChatGPT.
We're going to try it again and see what. So it doesn't matter. I mean, live demos are horrible, but I can tell you that this works. I know we're going to blame Rebecca. Thank you, Michael.
Harsh. All
Okay.
right. Well, it didn't work. It usually does. I have witnessed this.
What happens if I just refresh all of ChatGPT and I do it one more time and see if it changes anything?
Try turning it on and off. You're funny.
Well, we're getting farther than last time. There we go. Look at this. So evaluation based on the four key traits. I also include no jargon, by the way. So we didn't have any industry jargon, emotion or pain. We didn't have clear emotion or pain. There was a solution, need to get home safely implies a solution which weakens the statement. Um, thank you, Laura. But then what it does is it actually rewrites your statement, your problem statement. It rewrites it in a more specific example, and it rewrites it in a more general example. And the reason I love this is because problems can be really specific and really general. You may have heard the saying, Ted Levitt said the saying, people don't want to buy a quarter-inch drill. What they want to buy is a quarter-inch hole.
That more specific one is pretty good.
Yeah, but it turns out nobody actually wants to buy a quarter-inch hole. What they really want to do is buy the ability to hang a picture over their fireplace. But actually, nobody really wants the ability to hang a picture over their fireplace. What they want is a nice looking living room, right? And so we could get more and more specific or less and less specific. And what we're looking for is what's that level of the problem that resonates with our buyers. And so you guys all have access to this if you want it. It's no big deal. I mean, I'm sorry, it's a huge deal. Here's a QR code that gets you there. Or you can just go to your chat GPT and then search for pricing GPT and you'll find it. And we'll send you guys can all have copies of the slides. You'll have that there as well.
Well, and it's nice because we do problem statements for all kinds of reasons, right? When we're doing positioning, when we're sharing requirements to work, all of these ways that we do them. So being able to test and refine your problem statements from a third party is a third AI is good.
Yeah, yeah. Yvette, I love your question. What problem does this chatbot solve? It solves the problem that people are horrible at writing um, problem statements, and I don't have time to review them all. Oh, and I don't like criticizing people when they write bad problem statements. What, you think I do like it, Rebecca?
I was like, I mean, everyone here heard you criticize mine. I feel like
Okay, the third column in a value table is the results column. In the world of B2B, results are KPIs. Let me say that again. In the world of B2B, results are KPIs. If you are trying to sell something to a company, they're buying it to improve their profit. I get it. But there's probably a KPI somewhere in there that's different, that's a subset of how am I going to improve my profit. So it could be some percent improvement of a functionality or hours that we saved or increased sales, higher conversion rates. I mean, we know all these KPIs that companies use. What are the KPIs we're going to help our customers move? And when you can articulate those KPIs, then you are starting to understand what's the value you're really delivering to your customer. You may recall in the example that we're going through, by taking orders at the edge of the parking lot, we have more time to prepare the food, resulting in 2 more cars per hour during peak times. So here's a KPI, 2 more cars per hour during peak times. The last of our 4 columns is value. And here you want to think about the financial value, the monetary value. When you're delivering in B2B, we know that B2B value is measured in incremental profit. So we're going to figure out what's the incremental profit. And we could do that in terms of increased revenue or decreased costs. And we already said, let's ignore reduced risk if we can. And so in the example, we had 2 cars, 3 peak hours, 360 days, $10 a car, 60% margin. There's the incremental profit from that KPI. So I'm going to pause for a second and say the following. I would never, ever, ever walk into a McDonald's and say to a McDonald's drive-through manager, McDonald's manager, hey, we've got this long-range communications radio. It's going to make you $13,000 a year when you buy it. But instead, what we could do is we could talk to a McDonald's manager and say, hey, do you have the problem where your drive-through lane slows down because people are ordering, um, because you have to wait to prepare the food? If we could solve that problem, what do you think we could impact? How many more cars per hour do you think we could get? If we could get that, how much do you think that would be worth to you? So we're writing these value tables not as fact, we're writing them as a story. We're writing them so we as product managers, and by the way, salespeople, now have the ability to understand where the value is, what it is they're looking for. And it's so much easier to do it this way than to just walk in and say, hey, we've got a long range communications radio. How much is that worth to you? You guys are all business people. I'm guessing that if you read these specifications, that you would be able to say, yeah, this computer is good enough for me, or no, this computer isn't good enough for me. So this is just a bunch of features, and we could probably make a decision based on features. But think about your grandfather for a second, and he's going to buy his very first computer, and he walks into the geek store, and the person behind the counter reads these specs to him. What does he say? He says, yeah, but can I see my grandkids over the interwebs? Right? He's clueless. He has no idea what that does for him. And so when we think about this, there's a huge difference between experts and non-experts. Experts, we can tell them features and they know if it solves their problems. They can estimate what kind of results they might get. They can probably calculate how much value they're going to get. Non-experts are clueless. But here's the question. When you are selling to a new customer, are they experts on your product or not experts on your product? And I would argue most of the time we talk to non-experts. They don't know what we do. They don't know how it's going to impact their business, their life, their world. So it turns out that experts and non-experts have problems. They want some result, they want value. The difference is experts can hear your features and translate that into problems, results, and value. Non-experts can't. Everybody cares about problems and results. Nobody cares about your product. When an expert sees your features, they're able to translate that into problems and results, but they don't really care about your product. They care, does it solve my problem? They care, does it deliver my results? And so we should be spending our time thinking about problems and results and much, much less time thinking about and talking about our features, our products, our capabilities. Okay, I got 20 minutes to go before we do value conversations. Any questions, Rebecca?
We do have some questions. One just came in from Matthew. Is there a way to assign value to an intangible problem?
Yes.
Say a product that makes a financial audit easier and therefore less stressful.
Yes, there is. And I'm going to show you in a second.
Okay, well, these questions should go really well then. Just kidding.
I love that. We're going to talk about value conversations in a minute. If there's any other questions, we'll just jump into it.
Oh,
But one of the concepts we're going to get to is something called peeling the onion, and I'll try to address that when we get to peeling the onion.
okay. One of the other questions that came earlier, and I had missed it, I apologize, was what advice for selling to charitable organizations that aren't driving revenue? And we always try and tie it generally to increased revenue, but charitable organizations where that is not their drive.
Yeah. Fabulous question. And in fact, there's other examples where a buyer doesn't care about profit, right? So I say in B2B, value is measured in incremental profit, and that makes a lot of our life easy because we just take everything to profit. But as soon as you find out that someone doesn't really care about profit, then what we have to do is understand, what do they care about? What does value mean to them?
Mm.
It's very likely one of the KPIs that we have in the results section. So instead of trying to say, hey, value is X number of dollars, we say value is number of lives saved. Value is number of people, helped. Value is, so there's something else there that they're measuring their success with. And what we want to do is understand what that is and make sure we're tying back to that for them as we're selling value.
Excellent. All right, and one more question from Roger. Please comment on the merits and relevance of the spin selling method, which is a consultative sale that leads the prospect through its situation, problem, implications, and need payoff.
I'd rather not, only because I'm not an expert in it, and so I don't want to say that I represent it well or not well. Um, I I pretend to know value really well. I don't pretend to know selling really well.
Yeah, I mean, and I'd say, yes, I was pretty sure you'd come up with that answer. But I mean, I think there's different techniques for which to do it, which is probably where the differences would come through. I would say from a solution to problem to piece, there's a lot of similarity there, but the approach they take and the depth they take would be different because, as you said, you are a value expert, not a sales expert.
Yes.
And there are lots of good sales approaches and techniques.
And from what I can tell, what we talk about in terms of solution, problem, result, and value fits in almost every one of those techniques.
Mm-hmm. Yes, agree.
So, all right, let's talk about a concept called value conversations. This is the last of three modules. Um, One of the problems that we have is that, okay, I'm sorry, I want to set this up differently. I would normally teach a salesperson how to do what we're about to talk about. And so you might see sales in here, but I'm assuming that I'm talking to a whole bunch of product managers, not a whole bunch of salespeople. And so what I want you to do is understand that the conversations your salespeople can have, you can have the exact same conversation. Maybe the results are slightly different, but they're almost exactly the same thing. Because here's what happens is it's really sad when I talk to customers where I have clients and they don't really understand. I didn't want to do that yet. And they don't really understand um, what the value of their product is. They don't really understand their customers. And so what we need to get them to do is just go out and have conversations, just go out and talk to people. But it isn't a random conversation. Can we adjust that conversation or point that conversation towards value? And that's what we're after here. And by the way, that's what salespeople want to do too when they're selling the value of our products. And so we think about it. If you go to talk to any individual customer or buyer, they don't know you don't know the value of your solution to any buyer. You don't know their situation. You don't know the size of the company. You don't know the problems they actually have. And in the exact same result or vein, they don't know the complete value of your solution. They don't know what all the features are, what all they do. They haven't bought something like yours before. And so what ends up happening is we have to have a conversation, and it isn't me trying to get something out of them. It's really us working together to figure out, is there value here? How much value is there here? That's what we start thinking about when we think about the value conversation. And so I find that with salespeople, intent is probably the most important thing. The intent counts way more than the technique. If a salesperson goes in, or you as a product manager goes in thinking, hey, I'm trying to sell a product, I've got some quote I need to meet, I want to look smart, like I know everything, I'm trying to trick them into buying something, it gets really hard to do these because you're not genuine, authentic, friendly. But this whole thing changes as soon as you have the right attitude. The right intention is, I'm here to help you make more money. I want you to be successful. I want to make sure you make a good decision. And the only way we can do that is to understand how much value is really there. And so when we go in and talk to our potential clients, oh, by the way, in pragmatic world, this is called NIHITO, right? Just to let you know, I remember something. This, this is called NIHITO. We want to go out and have these conversations with our buyers so that we can learn what is it that really matters to them. Value conversations demonstrate that you care about their results. That's what we're after. So step one, we want to collect the problems and the results potentially. And so you could ask questions like, why do you think you need this? And they're going to give you potentially a problem or maybe even a desired result that they're after. And that's perfectly okay. Um, Listen intently. Please don't guess. Don't make assumptions. You've probably heard some things many, many times, but don't make the assumption that that's what they're thinking or that's what they're saying. Let them do it. Let them say it. Don't formulate a response. How often are we in the middle of an argument and we're thinking about what we want to say next as opposed to just listening to what's being said? What we're doing here is we're just listening. How well can we listen? And please don't talk about solutions. Absolutely don't talk about solutions. And see how many we can find. It's okay if we find problems that we're not solving. It's okay if we find problems that we are solving. We just want to collect as many problems as we can find. Inevitably, when you're talking to a buyer, they say, yeah, but I really want it in red, or they ask for some feature. Here's what you want to do. First thing you want to do is provide comfort. So say something like, yeah, we hear that from other people as well, but then kind of confuse the story. But different people mean different things. And then ask permission. May I ask you a few questions about what that means to you? And so now we get to go back to the problem and not focus on the feature. Our buyers often ask us for features. Or they'll say, do you have this feature? It's the exact same story. Provide company. Yes, great question. It's one of our best features. However, many customers expect different outcomes when they ask about it. May I ask you a few questions about what that means to you? What we're trying to do again is get back to what are the problems? What are the problems? 5 whys. Great, Kelly. I appreciate that a lot. And so if you think about it, the problems we're looking for here, the example was our drive-through lane slows down when customers have to prepare for us to have to wait for us to prepare the food. And so we could capture this problem with enough conversation and enough questioning of what we're after. Step two, we want to quantify the results. As we quantify the results, we ask the question, how do you measure this? Whatever the problem is, how do you measure it? What is it now? What could it be, or what would you like it to be, or what do you think it could get to? And this is the quantifying of the results for us. What we're looking for are measurable items. When we think about measurable items, these are things like revenue, cost, customer satisfaction surveys. Some people have quality measures. So you can read all these. We're looking for something that we can put a number on. Now, we had a question earlier that was for something that we couldn't put a number on. Rebecca, can you remind me what was that?
Uh, Making an audit easier, less stressful.
Okay, so how do I put a number on easy or less stressful? And I have no idea. I can't put a number on easy or less stressful, but I can ask a specific question. I could say, how do you measure easier or less stressful? And they go, well, we don't measure easier or less stressful. Well, if it were easier or less stressful, what do you think would happen? And then they would give us a different answer. So if it were easier or less stressful, um, maybe I could have higher productivity, get more done in a day. Maybe we would have lower turnover in the organization. Um, I don't know what's measurable, but we're going to hear something that they're going to say. And then we go back to, well, how do you measure that? And we could just keep peeling the onion until we find something that's measurable.
So just for clarification here. So as the product people listening, are you recommending that they spend some time building value tables and for features in order to understand the areas that would be worth exploring, right? So that is here's the areas where they deliver. It is a tool for the salespeople to know where to explore. It is not an answer that we give them. The answer is not $12,749. Uh, and for them, they use this sort of open discovery to really focus on getting the actual problems in their language, getting the metrics that they value in their language. Yes?
Absolutely right. I would say, so the value conversations we're going through right now is how do you as a product manager create a value table?
Hmm.
Why do you want to create a value table as a product manager? Because your salespeople aren't selling value because they don't understand what value means. If you were to craft this value table, at least start one, then it may be that your salespeople pick that up and think of that as a roadmap. Oh, here are the problems we solve. Here's the results that we could possibly deliver. And I could work with my client to figure out how much that's worth to them, to each individual buyer, each individual customer. But the problem we have today is that salespeople don't understand the value of what they deliver. And I'm going to translate that into salespeople don't understand what are the problems we solve and the results our customers should achieve or expect.
And then just because you touched on NIHITO, when we're doing that value table originally, you're saying that it is also something we can explore in our NIHITO visits, not just the problems they have, but also use those NIHITO visits to talk them to find out results and impact and the metrics they use against those problems for us to be able to really create a very solid sort of roadmap of value tables.
Absolutely. And wouldn't it be great if when we put our development resources on a new project, a new feature, that we knew that it delivered value to our
Mhm.
marketplace, that someone was willing to pay us for it?
What a big part of prioritization that would be, right? If
Right.
we know these are the metrics that care and I can show the feature moves it, that would be big.
Hmm. Absolutely. And then the last step in value conversations is calculating the value in dollars. So we just ask them, what's the value of the difference? And I would make the client do the math. With any luck, this is the same thing as an ROI calculator, but it's in your head or in your salesperson's head, not in an Excel spreadsheet. So can I help them walk through the math to say, what's this worth to your company if you buy and use this and achieve these results that you think you can achieve? So if we go back to that drive-through example, how do you measure it? Well, we measure it in cars per hour during peak times. What is it now? We get 73 cars per hour. What could it be? We could get it to 75 cars per hour. What's the value of the difference? That's the math you saw me do before. So we're just walking through how might we do this? How might we have a value conversation with a McDonald's manager? And so if we think about this value table, I really like this one concept here. We can fill out an entire value table without even knowing what the solution to the problem is. If we know what the problem is, we know what the results are that we think we could get to, and we know what the value is, then we can go back and say, okay, what do we think the right answer is? What do we think the best solution is? And I feel like a pragmatic instructor again all of a sudden. But the value conversations demonstrate that you care, right? This isn't about tricking customers. This is about us helping customers understand, is there value here? Is this a good decision for them or not? That's what we're after. I still have 7 minutes. What should I talk about, Rebecca?
There's lots of good questions coming through, right?
Oh,
So we could do those.
let's do them.
All right. In B2B, a software solution will create a different value for every single customer. On top of that, customers normally don't disclose those numbers. So, what is the recommended journey to discover willingness to pay? Which I think is what you were just talking about. It is a joint conversation with the customer.
Yes. And so assuming that you have a direct salesperson, so that means your price is probably over $10,000 a year or something like that. So you have a direct salesperson. You want that salesperson to learn to have these conversations with the buyers. They may not be willing to share all that information directly with you, but worst case, you could get them up to the point where we're going to start put dollar values on it and say, look, you don't have to tell me the numbers, but let's talk about how to calculate the value. Now, we didn't talk about willingness to pay at all. I usually think of, we did in the beginning, I usually think of willingness to pay as How am I going to set a price? How am I going to change a price? Or maybe how do I negotiate prices? But any good salesperson, if they can communicate that value, should be able to achieve the prices that we think we deserve already. Unless it's obvious, right? We're going to talk to a company that really doesn't have this problem, or the problem's not very big, and we want to win them anyway, or we want them as a client anyway, then we should be able to recognize that and say, okay, we're not going to charge them as much for that reason. But we should have the understanding of what's the severity of the problem.
Hmm. Yes. All right. Uh, Another good question. Would you, and if so, how would you adjust or modify this process when providing professional services?
It's the exact same thing. When I think of services, when I think of products, when I think of software, it doesn't matter. It's always about people hire you because they're trying to buy a solution to a problem. And so it's the exact same thing.
This one I just know is fun. I'm running a conjoint analysis to evaluate how well we are aligning with willingness to pay and maximizing the volume margin indexes. What other tools or approaches would you recommend to pair with the conjoint?
Um, so, God, so I think conjoint is phenomenal at understanding the value of individual features to individual buyers. And so when we start thinking about willingness to pay, uh, everybody is different and everybody is unique. And so the thing I would be thinking about is, can I take the responses I get and start saying, hey, there's a market segment that really cares about these two features, but doesn't care about anything else. And what is it that they care about, and why do they care about those two things? And what's the real problem they're solving? So I would use that as a way to start doing segmentation, whether it's market segmentation or price segmentation. I would find that extremely valuable. I would caution you when you run a conjoint study or you run almost any type of pricing study, the real problem we have is that we're asking people about the features.
Mm.
And just as we talked about in the beginning of this webinar, do they understand the value of any given feature? So if we're asking somebody, hey, how much more would you pay for more memory in your phone? Well, what's the value of more memory in the phone? And do they actually understand that? That's what we're looking for. And so doing market research around features is a little challenging, but it's not saying it's not valuable. It's just challenging.
All right, there are more questions, but we are just about out of time. So I do know that Mark is very generous with his time on LinkedIn. If you want to actually send some of your questions there too. But two things that you would have everyone here do differently tomorrow based on what we talked about today.
Oh my gosh, why do you always ask that question?
Why are you always surprised? That's the better question.
Um, so the first thing I would do is I would start thinking about value in terms of incremental profit to your customers, especially in the world of B2B. And so know that you break that down into problems and results, right? It's hard, it's not easy to do, but just start thinking that way, and it can make a really dramatic impact in how you do this. And then secondly, once you start thinking that way, next time you do a NIHITO visit, a customer visit, and you start having conversations, see if you can do a value conversation. See if you can get from the potential buyer, what are the problems and the results, even if you don't take it all the way out to dollars. See if you can get the problems and the results in a KPI that matters to them.
Awesome. All right. Remember this, right? Every discount your sales team gives away is profit walking out your door. So these are some good frameworks to keep that from happening. So, Mark, thank you very much for your expertise. And everyone, as always, you guys were amazing in chat. So we appreciate that. Next month, join us again. Handoff moments, PM and PM decision points in practice, right? Where is there tension and where is there really good success when we get it right? So that's going to be a fun conversation. All right, that does it for today. Don't forget to join us next month when we tackle another great topic designed to help you elevate your product, your company, and your career.